Hi guys, welcome back to a Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha and I feel so blessed to be a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So guys, we're so close to 1K here on YouTube. So don't forget to pause the video, go down there, hit the subscribe button because I want to do something really fun for when we get to 1K. So go hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed and let's get there. Today we're actually going to do a really important topic in Vedic astrology, which is going to be the moon sign placement through all the 12 houses. Okay, so the reason this is so important is because Vedic astrology is actually a lunar-based system of astrology, meaning that the moon sign nakshatra essentially sets up the entire dasha sequence, right? So whatever someone's moon sign nakshatra is, that is dictating their whole life experience based on what they're going to go through in different planetary dasha cycles, right? And because Vedic astrology is a lunar-based system, the moon becomes very, very important in the chart, right? Like the moon is essentially our comfort. It's what makes us feel very comfortable in this lifetime. It's our nurturing, it's our emotional upbringing, it's the mother. So a lot of insight and information can come from the moon placement and what house it sits in. It's really important, actually. And whenever I look at charts, there's a whole analysis to Vedic astrology. You guys know this. It's one of the most complex things that you can study. And I say this all the time, half joking, but really completely serious, that sometimes Vedic astrology makes my head hurt. Like when I was younger, years back, I picked up this Vedic astrology book and it was like Beginner's Guide to Vedic Astrology. And I have the most clear, vivid memory of this because I was only doing Western astrology at the time as a hobby. And I picked up this Vedic astrology book and I looked at it and I started reading it. And I went, oh my God, I'm never going to learn this. And it actually hurt my head to try to understand the concepts of the book. And I threw it on my bed. I literally threw it on my bed. And I was like, I'm never going to learn Vedic astrology. And that's how it felt at the time. It's a very, very complex system of astrology. Something I do really focus on in the chart is the moon, because the moon is where someone feels a lot of comfort in this lifetime, and it really can give us a lot of insight into where a lot of their karma is playing out and where a lot of their life experience revolves around. So the moon house is really, really important. And the moon is also, it's always fluctuating, right? So the moon is not so idle. It's always waxing, it's always waning, it's always changing, it's always shifting. So the moon in the chart can also be a place of a lot of fluctuation, right? There can be a lot of unexpected changes, highs, lows, ups, downs in the house that the moon activates as well too, okay? So we're going to go through the moon in all 12 houses and discuss themes that can unravel or occur when the moon is in every single house. Right, so something important to note is that the moon is a benefic, so it's a natural benefic, which means that if the moon is well placed and it's not hit by two other malefics and it's not fallen in Scorpio, then there can be a lot of good energy with the moon, right? Because it is that benefic planet. And if you guys don't know what a benefic planet means, it means that it's a positive planet. It's manifesting in a more positive form. Maybe if you guys want me to do this, I can do a video on the benefics versus the malefics and which planets are which, and we can go through and do a little lesson there. That could be really fun. But the moon is naturally a benefic or positive planet, right? So if it's not poorly aspected, then the moon is naturally a place that is going to show some good energy about it, all right? And especially if the moon is well placed and aspected by other benefics, like if the moon is in the second house, hit by Jupiter, hit by Venus, then that can be a really great house for someone. So obviously there's further analysis needed. I never, I repeat, never want anyone to ever watch a video of mine and say something so simplistic, oh my God, my moon's in the 10th house, it's a benefic. that must be great, and then not realize the complexity of Vedic astrology. Oh, is the moon fallen? Is it exalted? Is it hit by 2 malefics? Is it hit by 2 benefics, right? So keep that in mind. Every video of mine that you watch, that Vedic astrology is so complex. This is like us trying to simplify it to some degree, but there is a lot to be analyzed further, okay? All right, so the moon in Vedic astrology is Manas, which means the mind. So it's a place of our mental energy, our emotions, our intuition, comfort, what makes us feel safe, what makes us feel nurtured, and also a place of a lot of shifting and fluctuations. Okay, and a lot of the way that Vedic astrologers talk about the moon is they say it's where you play out your karma. So it's like where you have a lot of karmic experiences, good and bad and up and down fluctuations, okay? Okay, so I have typed up a little Google Doc as usual because I have a natal Mercury retrograde. And if I do not have a document before I start a video, I'm going to go on tangents and I'm going to get really lost and all over the place. So it's really important for me to do like a document before I start speaking, which if you guys also have natal Mercury retrograde, I always suggest for clients, if I see they have that in their chart, I tell them like write things out, type things, get your thoughts clear before you start speaking, because we get very scattered when we start talking and it can get a little wild, okay? So if you guys see me looking down at something, I'm looking at the Google Doc that I have typed up. Okay, so let's start with moon in the first house. So moon in the first house is a very sensitive placement, right? Because the moon, which is the emotional nature, is right on someone's ascendant. So they can be very sensitive, very empathic. They can really like to nurture people and help people in this lifetime. And they're going to have a very sensitive nature about them, right? Like they filter the world through a more emotional lens, right? It's less intellectual. It's not like Mercury in the first house, which is going to be someone who's very much so an intellect. Moon in the first house is someone who's emotional. They're sensitive. They feel everything very deeply. They're very receptive to everything, right? So this is similar to like a Cancer ascendant, right? Someone who is picking up on all the undertones and the emotions of everyone and can be very spongy and empathic in that way. Moon in the first house can give someone an ability to gain attention, to, want attention in this lifetime, be seen in the public, because the moon is the public and the masses as well too. So they can have an energy about them, especially if the moon is bright and not dim in the chart. And let's say it's also aspected by Jupiter or Venus, they can really have an ability to be seen in the world. They go out, people notice them, people want to talk to them. They can really magnetize a lot of attention with that moon in the first house, okay? They can be very intuitive, empathic, nurturing, emotional, and also an ability to be seen. I believe Michael Jackson was someone who had moon either in his first house or aspecting his first house, and he was always in the public. He was always seen, and he was also very sensitive. He was a man, but he was very in tune with emotions, right? Because that moon energy is more feminine, it's more receptive, it's more sensitive. So if a man has like moon in the first house, he can be more nurturing and feminine than traditional masculine energy, right? Yeah, and because the moon is very waxing and waning, up and down, they can be moody, they can very affected by everyone else's moods and feelings as well too. And they should really try to focus on their own emotional needs and security as opposed to trying to help and nurture everyone else around them as well too. All right, so that is moon in the first house. Very intuitive, very receptive sort of energy, strong intuition. Okay, moon in the second house. So moon in the second house means someone is always thinking about security, financial abundance, stability. They can just constantly be thinking about their money, right? Because that's the second house. And the second house is money that we make ourselves and earn ourselves. So we'll talk about this when we get to the eighth house, but The 8th house is like other people's money. The 2nd house is our own earned money. So it's like we're going to a job and we're making this amount, we're getting a paycheck, we're getting our own sort of income. And I find a lot of people when they have moon in the 2nd house, they just always want more money, more stability, more security. And the thing about the moon is, remember how it fluctuates. So they can have ups and downs in money. They can have a lot of money sometimes and it's never enough. And then it's up and it's down and it's waxing and waning in that way. But they think a lot about money. They feel safe through financial security, right? Because remember, the moon is the place and the point of safety. So if someone has their moon, which is the safe, secure sort of planet, and it's in the 2nd house, they can feel the most safety and comfort through like financial abundance and security, right? Which is not bad. That's not inherently bad. It's just how they feel safe. And so they always want that, and they always think about that. Like, how can I feel more secure? How can I feel more safe? How can I feel more stable financially? Okay, it's really important for them, actually. Like, when I get clients who have moon in the 2nd house and they ask me about leaving a job, or they're like, should I leave this job that's very secure and stable? I always tell them, you have moon in the 2nd house, so you need to feel stable and you need to feel secure. So don't do it unless you have like some other form of security. And they're always like, you're right. They're like, you're right. I love stability and security. So it's really important with moon in the 2nd house to make sure you feel stable and secure within the financial realms. Really, really important. Okay, the 2nd house is also knowledge. It's also learning and education and using the voice. So moon in the 2nd can show a desire to express and acquire knowledge and use the voice and speak, right? But again, it's like fluctuations, so there can be ups and downs there as well too. There can be a strong attachment to resources and expression and their own personal values as well too. They can think a lot about, what do I value, what's valuable, right? The 2nd house is self-worth and value as well too. It's also early childhood experiences. So with moon in the 2nd, can go either way, right? It can be like, if it's well aspected, they can have a very nurturing sort of early childhood experience. If it's moon in the 2nd hit by 2 malefics, the early childhood could have had a lack of stability, a lack of comfort, a lack of security, right? It really depends on like the aspects on the moon in the 2nd and how it's going to play out, but they can think a lot about early childhood and their experiences as well too with moon in the 2nd house. But again, ups, downs, there can be fluctuations in those realms of the 2nd house. Okay. Moon in the 3rd house. So with moon in the 3rd house, there can be an importance of a younger sibling. So they can have a special connection to a younger sibling. They can feel like a younger sibling is like unique or important in their life to some degree. They can feel like the younger sibling is successful. Again, depends how it's aspected, right? If it's hit by malefics or benefics, that's a huge role in this. But they can have a very close bond to a younger sibling. So the 3rd house is also the house of like energy, life force, going out and about in the world and like always doing these like errands or tasks. So moon in the 3rd house would be someone who's always going out to do something. They have to go run an errand. They have to go, connect with this person. They have to go do this. Like the 3rd house is very much like all these like errands and tasks and life force and energy. And it's constant energy with the 3rd house. And the 3rd house is also sales and business and communication and can be entrepreneurial endeavors as well too. So I get many charts, many clients where they have moon in the 3rd house and they work in sales, they work in business, they work in communication, because that's also the 3rd house. It's very much this salesy sort of house. They're connecting with people. They're always talking to people. There is that very strong communication and sales business aspect of the 3rd house as well too. And they can do really well with sales and business and any sort of field where they're talking, connecting, very much around people in that way. Okay, and their energy levels are very important in their life, but it can be a little bit up and down because remember the moon is always fluctuating, right? So they can always be busy, they're running errands, they always have these daily tasks. And the third house is also like short trips. So they can always be in their car, they can always be driving somewhere. The third house is quick trips in the car. The ninth house is more long trips, like we're flying somewhere or we're going somewhere far away. Third house is something that's quick. It's like short travels, right? So like my first ruler is in my third house. I feel like I'm always driving somewhere. Like, you know what I mean? And I remember my second Vedic teacher, James, who you guys know I always talk about, and so many of you guys love him and comment about him, which makes me so happy. But my first ruler is in my third house, and I'm always like going somewhere to run an errand. Like I don't really have a day where I'm not going somewhere to run an errand, right? Like it's just the third house. It's like you're going somewhere, you're driving somewhere, you have to go run an errand. Like it's very much that sort of energy with the third house. It's also just a lot of energy comes out of people who have a strong third house as well too. So it's like communication, sales, like that. Okay. And because the moon is there, they can feel the best when they are connecting with others, sales, marketing, entrepreneurial sort of side endeavors, short trips. That can be really important for moon in the third house. Okay. All right, so let's go down to moon in the fourth house. So this is really interesting because the moon is very similar to the fourth house, right? It's like the moon is the emotional nurturing, it's home, it's family, it's the mother. And then the fourth house is very similar in those themes, right? Because the fourth house is home, land, real estate, mother. So there can be a similar essence there in the sense that someone with moon in the fourth house is deeply attached to homes and spaces and their upbringing and real estate and the mother, right? There can be a deep sense of attachment and security in those themes because we have this sort of like double whammy energy where the moon has those meanings and then the fourth house has those meanings. They're very, very similar. Okay. So what you'll find with moon in the fourth house is there is such a deep need to live in like a beautiful space. Like they really need to feel comfortable in their actual physical environment. Like they need to live in a beautiful home. They need to be in beautiful spaces. They want nice cars. They can acquire land. They can acquire real estate. They can have a connection to land, a connection to real estate. It could also come through the mother. If the moon is strong and not aspected by a bunch of malefics, again, that's always important to remember. But for example, I had a client once who had moon in the fourth house hit by two benefics, and she was a real estate agent and she was like doing business with her mother. And I was like, do you do real estate? And is your mother connected to it? She was like tripped out by that. She was like, wait, I've been a real estate agent my whole life and my mother got me into it. It freaked her out a little bit because she was new to astrology. But the fourth house is homes, lands, cars, vehicles, real estate, like that. And the mother, of course. So because the moon is there, that can be something really important for them. That's where their karma's playing out. That's where they feel safe. They really need their like actual environments to feel nurturing, to feel comfortable to some degree, okay? And they can have a really strong attachment to their family, their roots, their ancestry, you know, like where their lineage is coming from. They can have a very close, strong, or like intense relationship with the mother. So it's either like they're very close or it might be too close as well too, especially if it was like hit by Rahu or something like that, right? If it made it more extreme in that way as well too. But that's going to be a really important relationship and connection with moon in the fourth house. Okay, so the emotional nature with moon in the fourth house is very deep. It's very private, right? They can be very emotionally tied to and connected to spaces, lands, real estate, themes of that nature. And the fourth house is a moksha house, right? So it is that more spiritual house. It's not as intense as the 8th house and the 12th house because those are moksha houses, but dastana houses, right? So there's like a difference there, but it is still a moksha house, meaning that it is very much intuitive and emotional and sensitive. So there's going to be a sensitivity with moon in the fourth house, best believe it. All right. Okay, so let's move to moon in the 5th house. This is a fun one. I like moon in the 5th house. So moon in the 5th house is a strong connection to creativity, expression, children, financial investments, right? Because the 5th house is the realm of investments, which I feel like people tend to forget, but I get so many clients where they have like a really strong 5th house and they work in investment banking. And if you miss that part of chart analysis, then you miss someone's whole career trajectory, right? If you don't remember that about the 5th house and you're like, oh, creativity and fun, and they're like, well, I'm an investment banker. Like, you have to remember that about the 5th house as well, too. So Moon in the 5th house can show a deep desire or connection for creativity and expression and financial investments. They can work well with other people's money. They can like to invest other people's money. They can like to invest their own money. It's also a very like romantic house. They can love, remember this, the 5th house is like sort of short-term connections where it's like more quick energy and more exciting and more passionate. The 7th house is more longevity and contractual agreements. So if Moon is in the 5th house, they can have had all these like fun, like love affairs throughout the country, and they write about it, and it's creative and it's fun, right? That's the 5th house. It's very like creative, fun, passionate sort of energy. So Moon in the 5th house, they can be very connected to children. Either they have children that they feel very close and bonded to, or they just love being around children, right? They can have this like really magnetic energy to children. I've seen charts where clients have a lot of benefics in the 5th house, and usually they want children, but if they don't, children are just drawn to them and love them, right? So that's going to be the influence of benefic energy. In the 5th house, a love for children, a love for all realms of expression and creative and romance and having fun, right? The 5th house is like a fun house, so they can really want to make their life really fun and exciting. It can also be a house of publishing and writing as well, too. So if Moon's in the 5th house, they might have a desire at some point to write, publish something, do some sort of like creative writing or some sort of passion project like that as well, too. And yeah, if it's well aspected, they're probably going to have children and really enjoy that as well too with Moon in the 5th house. Okay. All right, so that's a fun one. I like Moon in the 5th house energy. Okay, so let's move on to Moon in the 6th house. So the 6th house is the house of service and work and daily improvement, right? It's an Upachaya house, which means it gets better with time. So when someone has Moon in the 6th house, they have some sort of desire to serve or help or improve other people's life to some degree, right? So it's like this very service-oriented house. So, okay, funnily enough, whenever I see like a very activated 6th house, someone can be a hairstylist, right? Because they're improving someone's hair, they're using their hands, it's like a service industry, it's very hands-on. I get many charts where they have an activated 6th house and they're like hairstylists, right? So it's very much like all realms of service, the service industry, restaurants, helping people, healing. It's a very service-oriented house. So if the Moon is there and that's where they feel comfortable, that's where they feel, nourished, that's where the energy wants to go, it wants to activate in that house, they can constantly want to help improve things in this lifetime, right? They can be healers, they can work in helping and service fields. There's going to be a huge importance of service and work and daily routine. They can really enjoy having like these day-to-day routines that are super important to them, right? Can also show sensitivity in health, right? Because the Moon is so fluctuating, it's waxing, it's waning, it's sensitive. So they can have some like anxiety, some stomach issues. They have to watch their health, right? Their physical health, because the Moon can shift a lot in that way. Okay. And actually, malefics are better in the 6th house for overcoming health issues. But benefics in the 6th would mean they don't have a lot of enemies, right? So the 6th house is also the house of enemies. If benefics are there, they don't have as many. If malefics are there, they have a lot. But they can also overcome their health issues. So there's that aspect of it as well, too. But more than anything, Moon in the 6th house, they want to work, they want to serve, they want to help, they want to improve themselves and others. And they're going to be very focused on like their actual physical health a lot throughout their life, right? And they have to watch their physical health because it can be sort of up and down fluctuations there. Okay. All right, so let's move on to moon in the 7th house. So this is really, really interesting. So the moon in the 7th can show that someone is so deeply attached and influenced by other people's energy and what other people around them feel that it can be kind of draining on them, right? Like, one example of someone who has moon in the 7th house, I know this is like a very niche example, so I don't know if anyone knows this or if this is going to like connect, but I don't know if you guys have ever seen Vanderpump Rules, but Sheena Shea of Vanderpump Rules has moon in her 7th house, and she is so about like how everyone else feels. She gets in these like super codependent connections where she's like losing herself. You know, it's very moon in the 7th house. So when someone has moon there, they're very affected by what other people are feeling. They're very giving of their energy. You know, they really want to help other people out, and they're deeply tied and connected to the emotions of others, right? Because the moon is the emotional nature, 7th house is other people. So when it goes there, they feel everyone else's energy. They want to help other people. They're very committed, very tied to other people's emotions and feelings. And at times it can be so much so that it really affects them in their daily life as well too, right? Very empathic sort of placement. Okay, so they can be very committed. They can feel like they need partnership to feel like their best selves, right? To feel whole or complete. There's going to be like this deep bond and deep connection to others, their feelings and their emotions. Okay, because the moon is so feminine and sensitive by nature, they can attract people that are very intuitive, sensitive. They can attract someone who has more feminine sort of qualities in that 7th house of relationships, right? So someone who's kind of like moody, sensitive, up and down like that with moon in the 7th, or they can get someone who's very special, very unique, and someone that they feel very, very tied to, like spiritually or emotionally as well too. There can also be a deep desire to work in business and constantly connect with other people through business with moon in the 7th house, right? Like I had a client recently who has moon in the 7th, and I was like, do you always like connect with people all the time and business and you're always connecting with people? And she was just like laughing. She was like, yeah, my whole career is like always connecting with people. You know, so the moon in the 7th can mean they always have to connect with other people. They have to do business. They have to do business partnerships. They have to talk to people. They have to connect with people, right? That's the 7th house of other people, business, partnerships, connections like that. They're always going to have an interest in others and connections to some degree, right? But they have to be careful not to like lose themselves or overgive into the wrong sort of connections with moon in the 7th house, because they're deeply, deeply committed, deeply tied when they are, right? So yeah, it can be a very good placement for business and business partnerships as well too. Okay. All right, so next one is moon in the 8th house. You guys know this is my moon placement. Okay, so moon in the 8th house, for the most part, this is going to give someone who is a spiritual sort of seeker to some degree. Like there's a love for getting to the roots of things, unraveling mysteries. There's a deep love for figuring out why something is the way it is with moon in the 8th house. Like it's kind of like you're unraveling these threads with moon in the 8th house and you're like, oh, I see why that had to happen. I get why that person did that. I understand their motivations, right? Moon in the 8th house is this very like psychological placement where you're always trying to figure out the why behind things and the deeper meaning and the deeper reason, right? So a lot of times with moon in the 8th house, people love psychology or astrology or hidden meanings, hidden patterns. There can also be a deep love for research, lots of research, unraveling things. But the 8th house is a Dastana house, right? So moksha house, spiritual house, but Dastana house, which means it can also be very difficult, very up and down. So moon in the 8th house is usually lots of ups and downs in life, like highs, lows, really amazing things, really intense things. It can be both, right? It's a very sort of up and down house, but it is a benefic. So if they want to do anything psychic or spiritual or astrological, they can do really well in those realms, right? Very gifted spiritually. They can do well with other people's money. It's pretty wild. Like when it comes to benefics in the 8th house, I always see charts where they just really get other people's money very easily. They get weird checks in the mail, inheritance, government money. Like money just comes in really weird outside sources. That's a benefit of the 8th house, benefics in the 8th house, because the moon is a benefic. So can work with other people's money, can gain money from others pretty easily. Sexual charisma is also the 8th house. They can be very magnetic. They can be drawn to more taboo experiences, the undercurrents of life, and can feel things very, very deeply with moon in the 8th house. Like it's a very deeply sensitive house, right? And what I find is it manifests like scorpionic sort of energy, right? Moon in the 8th house is similar to moon in Scorpio in the sense that it might not seem like they're so emotional, right? Because it's not like Pisces or Cancer energy, but it's there. It's like very sensitive, but very hidden, very deep down, right? Think about Scorpio. It's, these like undercurrents, right? So that is really there as well too. But moon in the 8th house feels everything very, very deeply, very sensitive. Okay. All right. Let's move on to moon in the 9th house. So moon in the 9th house always is going to connect to travel. They love to travel. Okay. I don't think I've had a client who has moon in the 9th house that does not love to travel. Like it just happens. It just happens. Okay. So moon in the 9th house, they love to travel and they can like stop traveling for a bit and then something comes up and they need to travel again. They are going to be really connected to learning and teaching and education, and they can be very connected to the father. So the father can have a strong influence on them or their life or their personality to some degree, right? Like could be a positive effect or a negative effect depending on what's aspecting it. But there's going to be some strong influential energy of the father with moon in the 9th house. They can, have a father who's like special or kind of powerful or unique in some way. And they can have ups and downs there as well too, though, because it's the point of fluctuation. So there's definitely a desire to learn, educate. They can be very happy when they're traveling and learning and seeking philosophically, and they can do really well with guides or gurus, right? So like guides, gurus, teachers can take a liking to those with moon in the 9th house. If it's not fallen and hit by a bunch of malefics, people can just really want to give them knowledge, teach them things, right? So if someone has like the moon in the 9th house, it's well placed, it's not aspected by malefics, teachers can just really like them and be like, okay, I'm going to give you this knowledge, or here's this teaching for free, like that, right? Because it's a benefic. They can also have a lot of faith and optimism and trust, right? Because the 9th house is that house of trust and belief. So it can be a sense of like, oh, I just know things are going to work out for me. Things are always going to work out for me. That can also be moon in the 9th house is like a high degree of faith and optimism and trust as well too. But there is always a deep desire for travel and learning. They love to travel. They love to learn. And it doesn't have to be a traditional education, right? But they're going to love like books on philosophy or books on different cultures or learning about this and learning about that, right? There's like this deep desire for knowledge, like a thirst for knowledge with moon in the 9th house. Okay. Moon in the 10th house. So this is a great placement for anyone who wants to be seen in the public, anyone who wants some level of fame or success or recognition. It goes really well with moon in the 10th house, right? Because moon is the masses, it's the public, and the 10th house is the career, right? So moon in the 10th will give charts where a lot of people are very seen, very recognized, or well-liked in their career. So even if they're not quote-unquote famous, even though we've analyzed a lot of charts where famous people happen to have moon in the 10th house, even if they're not famous, they're just really good at what they do, right? So they can work in a more traditional field, like they could be a teacher, they could be a social worker, they could be a whatever, and people really respect them in their field of work, okay? I've seen it so many times. Like they're just very, very well respected in their work. And moon is also women. So I see a lot of charts where they have moon in the 10th house and they specifically work with women. There's like a deep connection to women in the work life, right? The father could be connected to the career. They can have some highs and lows as well too in the career, right? Some ups and downs, some fluctuations. Really good if someone wants to help or nurture or do something that's more moon-like, right? Something that's connected to women and the public and helping and service and nurturing. That's going to go really well with moon in the 10th house. But overall, it's like a really positive placement for the career because it's this benefic energy in the 10th, and the moon is where someone feels nurtured, so they feel nurtured by their career, right? They feel good in their career, even though there can be some fluctuations as well too. Okay, but yeah, moon in the 10th house just means that there's something about their career that can be very well recognized, it can be seen, and they can be really, really good or really important in what they're doing. Okay, so that's a really great placement. That's one of those placements whenever I see them, always, I wish I had this placement. I always tell clients about it. I'm like, I love moon in the 10th house. Really good placement. Okay, moon in the 11th house. So this is going to be a deep desire and connection for groups and organizations and friendships. Their friends are very important to them with moon in the 11th house. They love being a part of things. They love being a part of groups, and they want to be a part of a group and an organization, and they want to connect with people, right? That's moon in the 11th house. So the 11th house is also large sums of money, right? So like the second house is what we earn. 8th house is money that comes from external sources like inheritance, wills, checks in the mail. But then the 11th house is the ability to make big lump sums of money, okay? Like a lot of money. So if someone has moon in the 11th house and it's not poorly aspected or afflicted, they can make some real money in this lifetime, right? Because that's a benefic in the 11th. So they can also have some pretty big dreams and desires and goals and visions. The 11th house is that house of like big dreams, right? They can actually make them happen. They can make them manifest in this life, absolutely. They can also have a lot of different side ventures. They can do different things on the side that brings in money from outside sources. They can have important female friendships. They can be really connected to groups of women, or they like to be around women, and they can maybe be a part of like an organization, something that is specifically tied to women with moon in the 11th as well too. They can also have a special older sibling or a strong bond with an older sibling, because the 11th house is the older sibling, the 3rd house is the younger sibling. I've talked about this before though. This is one of those things that sometimes it's flip-flopped. Like sometimes someone has a 3rd house energy and it's an older sibling. They have an 11th house energy, it's a younger sibling. It's not always so perfect, right? Astrology isn't always so perfect. But more often than not, it would be an elder sibling. Okay, so that is the 11th house. They feel the most like safe and nurtured in 11th house, right? Big dreams, groups, organizations, lots of money. They're going to want to make a lot of money. And they have some pretty big desires in this lifetime. Okay, and now the final house, which is going to be moon in the 12th house. So 12th house is similar to the 8th house in the sense that it's a moksha house, but also a dhisthana house, right? So very spiritual house, but also can cause a lot of suffering and a lot of pain in early childhood experience. Like what you'll find with dhisthana houses, right, 6, 8, 12, is they usually get better as someone gets older, okay? So if you have moon in your 8th house, usually like the upbringing and the childhood can be very, very difficult because you feel everything so deeply. You're so sensitive. No one really understands you, right? And you're like, does anyone see these things that I'm seeing, right? Because you're very intuitive and you're in touch with like the psychic, etc. And so it's really difficult when you're younger. And I think moon in the 12th house is the same in that way, where it's really difficult when you're younger. But as you get older, you kind of learn how to work with that energy, and it becomes a lot easier with time. So the way that I see 8th house and 12th house energy is it gets a lot better with time. It's really difficult in like the early childhood experience because it's very like confusing and weird and you just feel everything and you're sensitive and you're psychic, right? But as you get older, you learn to work with that a little bit more, okay? So moon in the 12th house can be a desire for deep spiritual truth, enlightenment, non-attachment, a focus on sleep or the dream world as well too. Moon in the 12th house can give very much like a spiritual bend to that person, right? They want to learn about interesting spiritual topics. They might be into meditation, non-attachment, enlightenment, themes of that nature, raising consciousness. They can have like intuitive dreams. Their dreams or their sleep can be very important to them. What you will find with moon in the 12th house, because the 12th house is the house of solitude, is they need a lot of time alone to introspect and reflect, okay? So like whenever I see moon in the 12th house, I know that that's a chart where they need to be alone and like sit with their thoughts and meditate or just like be in quiet, right? It's like this sort of isolation retreat energy. With 12th house as well too, they love their alone time. They love it and they need a lot of it, okay? So the 12th house is also film and photography and television. So they can be very interested in film. They can love photography. They can have some connection there. It doesn't mean they do it professionally, right? Like it's not saying that someone's 10th house rulers in their 12th house, but if the moon is there, they can feel a lot of like comfort and happiness through film, through photography, through television. They can just love film. They can just really enjoy it, right? Or sometimes you see charts of celebrities and they have moon in the 12th house because they're like in the public through film, right? It can be both. It's, not just going to be so simple of an analysis, but they can have some deep love or connection to film and photography as well too. There can be a connection of foreign lands, right? The 12th house is different cultures, foreign lands. So they can really enjoy going to like some faraway place. They can really enjoy meditation and isolation and spiritual insights. That can be really important with moon in the 12th house. But again, when someone's younger, it's going to be a more difficult placement because they're going to be very sensitive, very empathic, very absorbent of everything around them. Like it's a very sensitive sort of house. When you have the moon, the subconscious in a moksha house, but a dastana house, right? So to me, I would see moon in the 8th house and moon in the 12th house as more difficult placements for the moon. But it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just more intense and difficult in like early childhood, early upbringing. And then usually that sort of like pain or intense emotional experiences lead them to spirituality. That's usually what happens with like moon in the 8th house or moon in the 12th house or just a lot of 8th house, 12th house energy in general. It's like, whoa, that was all crazy and confusing. Let me go seek something to find the answer to it. That's like the higher manifestation of 8th house, 12th house energy in the long run. Okay. All right, so that was the moon through all the 12 houses. Really important because Vedic astrology is a lunar-based system of astrology. So the moon becomes very important, right? The moon sign is so important. The moon house, the moon sign nakshatra quite literally sets up the entire dasha sequence of how someone's whole entire life experience is going to go, right? So like how could that not be extremely important in Vedic astrology, right? And it's the nurturing, it's the upbringing, it's the mother, all of it. It's super, super important. All right. So don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for more content coming soon. And definitely subscribe because we're so close. We're so close to 1K and I'm really excited about that as well. All right, sending all the love, sending the best vibes, and comment your experience with these moon sign houses down below. Bye, guys.